Welcome to the Life Paradox, where reality is stranger than fiction. Elena Matthews wiped sweat from her brow as she guided the pressure washer across the undercarriage of a gleaming black Range Rover. 6 months pregnant, her back ached with a dull persistence that never truly faded. The mid-July heat turned the car wash into a steam room, hot water mixing with the humid air until breathing felt like drowning. "Taking your break anytime soon?" Mario, her supervisor, called out over the mechanical drone of the equipment. Elena shook her head. "Can't afford to. Need every hour I can get." The truth hung heavy between them. After her husband Travis lost his construction job 3 months ago and started disappearing for days at a time, the burden of survival had fallen squarely on her shoulders. Their rent was 2 weeks overdue, and the eviction notice taped to their apartment door that morning had sent her to work with puffy eyes and a hollow chest. She moved to the next vehicle, a white Tesla with pristine leather seats. Luxury cars streamed into Cascade Car Wash endlessly. Westlake Hills was that kind of neighborhood, where people discussed vacation homes over coffee, and children attended private schools that cost more than Elena would make in 5 years. Every paradox begins with a question. If you love unraveling life's biggest mysteries, hit subscribe and join the Life Paradox, where every story bends reality. Elena winced as the baby kicked sharply against her ribs. She placed her palm against the taut skin of her belly, whispering words of comfort she no longer believed herself. "It's gonna be okay, little one. Mommy's got you." The Tesla's owner, a slender woman with immaculate blonde hair and diamond earrings that caught the sunlight, was arguing with someone on her phone. Elena kept her head down, working methodically while trying to become invisible, a skill she'd perfected in customer service. "Richard, you can't just transfer that kind of money without telling me," the woman hissed into her phone, pacing beside the car. "I don't care if it's for the foundation. That account is joint property." Elena carefully wiped down the dashboard, moving slowly to avoid drawing attention. $500,000 doesn't just disappear, Richard. The board meeting is tomorrow, and I know exactly what you're doing. The woman's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If you think you can hide assets before filing for divorce, you're mistaken. My attorney already knows about the Cayman account." Elena froze. The name Richard stirred something in her memory. Richard Davenport, the billionaire tech mogul who'd been in the local news frequently, celebrated for his charitable foundation that claimed to support struggling families. "I know about Sophia, too," the woman continued, venom lacing her words. "And the house you bought her in Austin. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Elena's hand trembled as realization dawned. Richard Davenport was the same man who'd cut funding to the community support program that had once helped her afford prenatal vitamins and doctor visits. The program that had disappeared overnight with a sterile press release about reallocation of resources. As the woman stormed off to the waiting area, Elena stared at her reflection in the Tesla's tinted window. Her hollow eyes gazed back, dark circles beneath them like bruises. But somewhere in their depths, something flickered to life. A dangerous spark of possibility. She knew nothing about offshore accounts or high-stakes divorce, but she knew what it meant to fight for survival, and sometimes survival required taking risks. The apartment was dark when Elena returned home that evening. She flipped the light switch. Nothing. The electricity had been cut off, just as the notice had warned. Sinking onto the threadbare couch, she kicked off her swollen feet and pressed her palms against her temples where a headache had been building all afternoon. "Travis," she called out, her voice echoing in the empty space. As expected, no answer came. The refrigerator had stopped humming, which meant everything inside would spoil by morning. Elena calculated what remained of her last paycheck. $27.16. Not enough for the electric bill. Not enough for groceries. Certainly not enough for next week's rent. The baby shifted inside her, a gentle reminder of what was at stake. Elena had spent the entire drive home turning over what she'd overheard. Richard Davenport's hidden millions, his wife's discovery, the foundation money that never reached families like hers. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "You okay? Need me to come over?" Elena stared at the message without responding. Melanie had her own struggles. 3 kids, a nursing assistant's salary, and a 1-bedroom apartment where she already let Elena store some belongings. She couldn't burden her further. Instead, Elena opened her browser and typed, "Richard Davenport Foundation." The search results populated with glossy photos of charity galas and press releases. One headline caught her eye. Davenport Foundation pledges $20 million for family support initiative. $20 million promised. The community program shuttered 2 months later. Elena clicked through to the foundation's website, navigating to the About page. There he was, Richard Davenport, with his perfectly tailored suit and practiced smile. Something about his expression made her skin crawl, the benevolent benefactor whose generosity existed only in press releases while he hid money offshore and bought houses for mistresses. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if sharing her indignation. With trembling fingers, Elena clicked the contact button. A form appeared on screen, requesting name, email, and message. Her cursor blinked in the empty fields, waiting. What would she even say? "I overheard your wife talking about your offshore accounts while I cleaned your Tesla." It sounded absurd, even to her. Outside, thunder rumbled as storm clouds gathered. Elena moved to close the window before remembering the eviction notice. Soon, this wouldn't be her problem anymore. Soon, she and her unborn child would have nowhere to go. Unless. The idea that had sparked at the car wash now flared brighter, illuminating possibilities both terrifying and tempting. She wasn't a blackmailer. She'd never broken a law in her life. But she'd also never been 6 months pregnant and facing homelessness with a missing husband and $27 to her name. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the barren walls where photos once hung, sold weeks ago to cover the electric bill that had been paid then but not now. With sudden resolve, Elena created a new email address. No identifying information, nothing traceable. Then she began to type, "Mr. Davenport, I know about the Cayman account. I know about Sophia and the house in Austin. I know what you're hiding from the foundation board. I don't want to cause trouble. I just need enough to start over. $100,000 will ensure my silence. Instructions will follow." Her finger hovered over the send button as rain began to lash against the window. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings about criminal charges, about dangerous men with resources, about crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But the part of her that had watched her world collapse, piece by piece, that part reached forward and pressed send. Morning arrived with unforgiving brightness. Elena had spent the night on the couch, too exhausted to make it to the bedroom, too anxious to truly sleep. Her phone battery hovered at 12%, precious little power remaining without electricity. To recharge it, she opened her email expecting nothing. Instead, she found a response. "Who are you? What proof do you have? This is a criminal offense." The message was sent from an anonymous account, not Davenport's official email. But she knew it was him. The reply had come at 3:15 in the Yao morning, the desperate hours when wealthy men lie awake worrying about their secrets. Elena's hands shook as she composed her reply. She hadn't expected a response so quickly, hadn't truly believed he would respond at all. The proof is in the foundation's financial records. The proof is in your wife's knowledge of accounts that shouldn't exist. The proof is in the missing $20 million that never reached the families you promised to help. She hesitated before adding, "I don't want to expose you. I just need enough to survive." The baby stirred, prompting Elena to place her hand protectively over her abdomen. What kind of mother was she becoming? What kind of desperation had driven her to this point? Her phone chimed again almost immediately. 100,000 is blackmail. 10,000 cash, one payment. Then this disappears forever. $10,000. The figure glowed on her screen like salvation. It wasn't what she'd asked for, but it was enough to secure housing, enough to buy time until the baby came, enough to start rebuilding. Deal, she typed back. Tomorrow night. The playground at Eastview Park. Midnight. Elena forced herself off the couch, wincing at the stiffness in her back. She needed to move, needed to think. $10,000 would arrive in her hands tomorrow night. $10,000 obtained through blackmail. $10,000 from a man who could destroy her life if he discovered her identity. A knock at the door sent her heart racing. Through the peephole she saw Travis, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, but standing steadier than he had in weeks. "I've been calling you," he said when she opened the door. "Your phone's been going straight to voicemail." "Power's out," she replied, flatly. "Battery's almost dead." Travis stepped inside, surveying the dark apartment. Something about him seemed different. His usual cloud of defeat had lifted slightly. "I got a job," he said quietly. "Construction crew in San Antonio. Foreman's an old buddy from high school. It's steady work, good pay." Elena stared at him, emotions warring within her. Relief, anger, suspicion, hope. "San Antonio is 2 hours away," she finally said. "I know. I'd stay in worker housing during the week, come home weekends. It's not perfect, but it's something, Elena. It's a start. A start." After months of sliding backward, after reaching the point of criminal desperation, now he offered a start. Her phone buzzed with another email notification. "Fine. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone or no deal." Travis glanced at her phone. "Everything okay?" Elena quickly darkened the screen. "Just spam." She looked at her husband, the man who had once promised to protect her, who had disappeared when things got difficult, who now stood before her offering a fragile strand of hope. And she thought about the man who would meet her in a dark park, tomorrow with $10,000, a man whose secrets had given her dangerous leverage. "I need to lie down," she said, moving past Travis toward the bedroom. "The baby's been active today." As she closed the door behind her, Elena felt the weight of her decisions pressing down upon her. Tomorrow night would change everything, for better or worse. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the gentle movements of the life within. "I'm doing this for you," she whispered, unsure if she was seeking forgiveness or offering justification. Either way, the path was set. There would be no turning back. The playground equipment cast long shadows under the pale moonlight. Elena arrived 30 minutes early, parking her sister's borrowed car 3 blocks away and approaching on foot despite her swollen ankles and aching back. Every rustle of leaves, every distant car engine made her pulse quicken. She chose a bench with clear sightlines in all directions, pulling her hoodie lower over her face. The night air carried a chill that didn't match the summer season. Or perhaps it was just her, nerves causing the goosebumps on her arms. Travis had been confused when she insisted on borrowing Melanie's car. "Where are you going this late?" he'd asked, concern etching lines around his eyes. "Just need to clear my head," she'd lied. "Doctor said walking helps with the swelling." Now, sitting alone in the darkened park, Elena questioned every decision that had led her here. The weight of what she was doing, blackmail, extortion, pressed against her chest until breathing became difficult. She wasn't a criminal. She was a desperate woman backed into an impossible corner. At precisely midnight, headlights swept across the park entrance. A black sedan with tinted windows rolled to a stop. Elena's mouth went dry. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face. Not Richard Davenport, but clearly someone who worked for him. A bodyguard or fixer sent to handle his dirty work. Elena stayed perfectly still as the man approached, fighting the instinct to flee. He stopped 10 feet away, keeping his face angled down. "You have information about Mr. Davenport?" His voice was deep, controlled. Elena nodded, not trusting her own voice. "Show me proof before we proceed." She hadn't anticipated this. "The proof is in his financial records. I know about the diverted foundation funds. I know about Sophia." The man remained impassive. "Anyone could know those names. What specifically do you know that makes this worth $10,000? Elena's mind raced. She remembered the Tesla, the phone call, the specific details. The Cayman account? Account number GS4739. The transfer of $500,000 3 days ago. Something in the man's posture changed. A slight stiffening that told Elena she'd hit her mark. "Mr. Davenport wants to know who you are and how you obtained this information." "That's not part of our agreement," Elena said, finding her voice. At last. $10,000 for my silence. That's the deal." The man reached into his jacket. Elena flinched, but he withdrew only an envelope, thick and white. "Count it," he said, tossing it onto the bench beside her. With trembling fingers, Elena opened the envelope. Stacks of $100 bills filled it, more cash than she'd ever seen in her life. She rifled through quickly. $10,000 as promised. "This ends here," the man said. "No additional demands. No contact. If Mr. Davenport hears from you again, there will be consequences." Elena nodded, clutching the envelope to her chest. The man turned to leave, then paused. "You don't know what you're involving yourself in. Take the money and forget everything you think you know." As he walked away, Elena remained frozen on the bench, the envelope heavy in her hands. The transaction had taken less than 3 minutes, but it had forever altered her life's trajectory. Only when the black sedan had disappeared from view did Elena allow herself to breathe normally again. She started back toward her sister's car, the envelope hidden inside her hoodie. At the park entrance, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure stepped out from behind a tree. Another man, smaller than the first, with a camera raised to his face. The shutter clicked, capturing Elena in the moonlight, envelope partially visible against her pregnant belly. Before she could react, the man disappeared into the darkness, leaving Elena standing alone with the sickening realization that this wasn't over. It had only just begun. 3 days passed in a blur of paranoia and planning. The $10,000 remained untouched, hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of What to Expect When You're Expecting that Elena had purchased at a thrift store. Travis had left for sand. Antonio the morning after the park meeting, his departure both a relief and a complication. Elena had paid the electricity bill, bought groceries, and given the landlord just enough to pause the eviction process, all from her meager savings, not touching the illicit cash. Every time she considered using Davenport's money, the memory of the camera shutter clicking in the darkness stopped her. She was being watched, perhaps followed. Each customer at the car wash became a potential threat. Each passing car a surveillance vehicle. "You look terrible," Mario commented during her shift. "You sure you should still be working in your condition?" Elena forced a smile. "Can't afford not to." But the truth was more complicated. Work had become her sanctuary, the one place where routine provided an illusion of normalcy. Home was now a space of shadows and imagined footsteps outside her door. When her phone rang with an unknown number that evening, Elena nearly dropped it into the sink of dirty dishes she'd been washing. "Hello?" she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Elena Matthews?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Elena's. Breath caught. No one associated with Davenport should know her name. "Yes?" "This is Catherine Woodward with the Davenport Foundation. I'm calling about your application to our Family Support Initiative." Elena frowned. She hadn't applied for anything. "I think there's been a mistake. We've reviewed your submission and would like to invite you for an interview tomorrow afternoon. 2 o'clock at our downtown office." Before Elena could protest, the woman continued. This is regarding the administrative assistant position. Salary is $50,000 annually with full benefits beginning immediately. Maternity leave is fully covered. The words struck Elena like physical blows. She hadn't applied for any job. She'd never contacted the foundation except through her anonymous blackmail emails. "How did you get my name?" she managed to ask. There was a brief pause. "Your application was quite impressive, Ms. Matthews." Mr. Davenport personally flagged it for priority review. Ice flooded Elena's veins. He knew who she was. Somehow, he'd discovered her identity. "I'll text you the address," Catherine continued pleasantly. "We look forward to meeting you." The line went dead before Elena could respond. She sank into a kitchen chair, mind racing through possibilities. Was this a trap? Was Davenport planning to confront her about the blackmail? Or worse, was this a way to lure her somewhere isolated? But $50,000, full benefits, maternity leave. It was everything she needed, offered by the very man she'd extorted. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming text. The foundation's address downtown, followed by another message. Business casual attire. Parking validated. So mundane. So normal. So terrifying in its implications. She opened her laptop and searched for Catherine Woodward Davenport Foundation. The woman existed, Director of Human Resources with a LinkedIn profile and several mentions in press releases. This wasn't some phantom created to deceive her. Elena placed her hand on her belly, feeling the rhythmic movements that had become more pronounced in recent days. "What should we do, little one?" The baby kicked in response, a Morse code she couldn't decipher. The interview could be legitimate, a strange coincidence, or perhaps a gesture of genuine charity from a wealthy man who recognized her desperate situation at the car wash. Or it could be something darker. A power play. A threat veiled in opportunity. Elena opened her messages and typed a text to her sister. "If I don't call you by 5 tomorrow afternoon, something's wrong. I'll be at the Davenport Foundation headquarters downtown." She hesitated, then added, "There's cash hidden in my apartment if anything happens to me. Inside the pregnancy book on my nightstand. Take it and use it for the baby." As she pressed send, Elena realized she'd made her decision. She would go to the interview. She would face whatever Richard Davenport had planned for her, because running wasn't an option anymore. Not with a baby coming. Not with eviction still looming. Not when someone knew exactly who she was and where to find her. The Davenport Foundation occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Elena stepped into the marble-floored lobby, feeling profoundly out of place in her borrowed maternity dress and scuffed flats. The security guard checked her ID, made a call, and directed her to the express elevator. 38th floor, he said. "They're expecting you." The elevator ascended smoothly, each floor bringing her closer to a confrontation she both dreaded and needed. Elena rehearsed what she would say if faced with Richard Davenport himself. Denial seemed futile. Apology perhaps equally so. The doors opened to reveal a reception area bathed in natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. A young woman with a sleek bob and perfect makeup greeted her. "Ms. Matthews? I'm Catherine Woodward. Thank you for coming on such short notice." Elena shook her hand, searching the woman's expression for any hint that this was something other than a job interview. She found nothing but professional courtesy. "Your resume indicates extensive customer service experience," Catherine said, leading her down a hallway lined with framed photographs of groundbreaking ceremonies and charity events. "That's precisely what we're looking for in this position." Elena struggled to keep pace, her pregnant body protesting the brisk walk. "About that, I don't recall submitting a resume." Catherine smiled without breaking stride. "We receive thousands of applications. Sometimes the details get confused. Here we are." She stopped before a heavy wooden door with a simple nameplate. Richard Davenport, founder and CEO. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as Catherine knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response. The office beyond was spacious, but surprisingly modest. No ostentatious displays of wealth, just clean lines and functional elegance. Behind a desk of polished walnut sat Richard Davenport himself, exactly as she remembered from the website photos, but somehow more human in person. Lines of exhaustion framed his eyes, and his posture spoke of tension rather than confidence. "Ms. Matthews," he said, rising. "Please have a seat." Catherine disappeared, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Elena lowered herself into the offered chair, gathering her courage. "Mr. Davenport, I think we both know I didn't apply for any job." His expression remained neutral as he studied her. "No, you didn't. But I believe in making opportunities out of unfortunate circumstances." "Is that what this is? An opportunity?" "That depends entirely on you." He leaned forward slightly. "My security team is quite thorough. When someone claims to have sensitive information about me, they investigate. License plate recognition software identified your sister's car near Eastview Park that night. Facial recognition did the rest." Elena's mouth went dry. "So this is blackmail in reverse? You're threatening me now?" To her surprise, Davenport shook his head. "If I wanted to threaten you, Ms. Matthews, this conversation would be happening in a less comfortable setting. No, this is something else entirely." He pressed a button on his desk, and a screen descended from the ceiling. Images appeared, surveillance photos of Elena at the car wash, at her apartment building, at the grocery store. 6 months pregnant. Husband recently employed but previously absent. Facing eviction. Working for minimum wage plus tips at a car wash despite health complications with your pregnancy. Each word struck like a physical blow. They had been watching her for much longer than she realized. "What do you want?" Elena asked, her voice barely audible. Davenport's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The same thing you want, Ms. Matthews. A solution." He stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "The information you referenced in your emails, about offshore accounts, about Sophia. It's complicated. Some of it is true. Some is not. The reality is more nuanced than my wife believes or than you could know." Elena remained silent, waiting. "The foundation is my life's work," he continued. "Everything I've built, everything I've sacrificed, it's been for this, to create lasting change for families in crisis." He turned to face her. "The position is real. Administrative assistant to the director of family support programs, $50,000 annually, full benefits, maternity leave, childcare assistance. A legitimate position with advancement opportunities." "Why would you offer me a job after I tried to blackmail you?" "Because you're exactly the kind of person this foundation was created to help." He returned to his desk, sliding a folder toward her. "And because I need someone who understands desperation, what it looks like, what it drives people to do." Elena opened the folder. Inside was an employment contract along with keys and a lease agreement for an apartment in a middle-class neighborhood across town. "The first month's rent and deposit are covered as a relocation bonus," Davenport explained. "The rest would be your responsibility, but well within your means with the salary offered." Elena stared at the documents, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "What's the catch?" Davenport's gaze held hers steadily. "Return the $10,000. Sign a confidentiality agreement regarding everything you think you know about my personal affairs. And, most importantly, bring that same fierce determination you showed in protecting your family to helping others in similar situations." Proposition hung between them in the sunlit office, salvation wrapped in compromise. A way out that required walking away from her ill-gotten gains and into a future controlled, at least in part, by the man she had attempted to extort. "I need time to think," Elena said finally. "Of course," Davenport nodded. "Take the documents. Home. Review them. But I'll need your answer by tomorrow morning. As Elena gathered the folder, he added quietly, "And Ms. Matthews? The $10,000 was never the solution you needed. This is." Dawn filtered through threadbare curtains as Elena sat at her kitchen table, documents spread before her, the hollowed-out pregnancy book open beside them. The envelope of cash seemed heavier now, tainted by knowledge and consequence. She hadn't slept. The baby had been restless all night, as if sensing the magnitude of the decision facing them both. Travis had called around midnight, his voice bright with stories of his first week on the job. Elena had listened distantly, unable to share the seismic shifts occurring in her own life. When he asked about her day, she mentioned only mundane details: the weather, a particularly dirty SUV at the car wash, her swollen ankles. Nothing about blackmail. Nothing about job offers from billionaires. Nothing about the choice that would redirect their future. Now, as morning light crept across the lease agreement, Elena traced her fingers over the address of the apartment Davenport had offered. She'd looked it up online. 2 bedrooms, in-unit laundry, a small balcony overlooking a community garden, walking distance to a grocery store, a bus stop nearby, windows that actually sealed against the winter cold. Her phone chimed with a text from Melanie. "You alive? Never got your call yesterday." Elena quickly responded, "Sorry, got home late. Everything fine. Talk later, everything fine." The words felt hollow, inadequate to contain the transformation occurring within her. Nothing was fine, but everything was changing. She returned to the employment contract, reading again the details of her potential position. The responsibilities seemed straightforward: coordinating applications for family support programs, scheduling, interviews, maintaining records, using her experience in customer service to be the first point of contact for desperate families seeking help. Families like hers. Elena placed her hand on her belly, feeling the persistent movements that had become her constant companion. "What would you do, little one?" she whispered. The question wasn't really for the baby. It was for the mother she was becoming, the person responsible for choices that would shape not just her future, but her child's. What kind of mother accepted a job from a man she had attempted to blackmail? What kind of mother turned down a lifeline that could rescue her child from poverty? Elena gathered the cash from the envelope, feeling the weight of each bill. $10,000 that had seemed like salvation a week ago now felt like shackles, binding her to a desperate version of herself she no longer recognized. With sudden clarity, Elena understood what she needed to do. 2 hours later, she stood, once again in the gleaming lobby of Davenport Tower. This time she carried a sealed envelope and wore not borrowed clothes, but her own best maternity dress, faded but clean, dignity and simplicity. The express elevator carried her upward, each floor marking another step toward resolution. When she reached the 38th floor, Catherine was waiting. "Ms. Matthews, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow. I need to see Mr. Davenport now, please." Something in Elena's tone must have conveyed her determination, because Catherine simply nodded and led her through the maze of hallways to the familiar wooden door. Richard Davenport looked up from his computer as they entered, surprise briefly crossing his features before his professional mask returned. "Ms. Matthews, you've reached a decision already?" "I have." Elena placed the sealed envelope on his desk. The $10,000, all of it. Davenport glanced at the envelope but didn't touch it. "And the position?" Elena straightened her shoulders, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "I want the job, but not like this. Not as some kind of arrangement or transaction." "Explain." "I did something unforgivable out of desperation. I became someone I never thought I could be. Someone who would extort money, who would threaten another person." Elena's voice trembled but held firm. "That's not who I am." That's not who I want my child to know. She pushed the contract toward him. If you still want to offer me this position, I'll accept it gratefully. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. I'll bring everything I've learned about survival and desperation to helping others find better paths than the one I chose. Davenport studied her for a long moment. And if I withdraw the offer? Then I'll find another way forward. One step at a time, one day at a time. Elena met his gaze without flinching. But I'll do it honestly. A smile, small but genuine, lifted the corner of Davenport's mouth. The position is yours, Ms. Matthews. On merit, not arrangement. He extended his hand, and Elena shook it firmly. One question, she said as their hands separated. Was any of it true? The offshore accounts? Sophia? The diverted foundation funds? Davenport's expression grew contemplative. My wife and I are separating, not because of another woman, but because after 20 years, we've become strangers with opposing visions. The foundation's funds have never been diverted, only reallocated through complicated but legitimate channels my wife doesn't fully understand. He gestured toward the window, toward the city beyond. The truth is rarely as simple as we want it to be, Ms. Matthews. You'll learn that working here. There are thousands of desperate people out there, each with their own complicated truth. Elena nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders, not just the burden of her attempted blackmail, but the heavier burden of who she had allowed herself to become in her desperation. When can you start? Davenport asked. Elena placed both hands on her rounded belly, feeling the life within responding to her touch. How about today? Outside, the summer sun illuminated the city, a landscape of challenges and possibilities stretching to the horizon. In that moment, Elena understood that the secret she had overheard at the car wash hadn't just changed her circumstances. It had awakened something within her that had been dormant through all the hardship and fear. A fierce determination not just to survive, but to reclaim who she truly was and to help others do the same. The baby kicked strongly beneath her palm, as if in agreement.